Well, welcome to the ccdelco podcast, everyone. I'm Pastor Bob Gaglione, and today, joined by Abdu Murray.
Great to be here.
Yeah, Abdu's been here before. Abdu's a lawyer, thinker, writer, speaks all around the world, and has an incredible backstory how he came to Christ out of Islam. And I love Abdu because I'm a lover of truth. Abdu's book is called Saving Truth, Finding Meaning and Clarity in a Post-Truth World. So let's talk about truth. Abdu.
Let's do it.
The Bible says we put on the belt of truth. Mm-hmm. It's who we are, and we've been brought into the kingdom of truth. So I'm in a series on spiritual warfare. Mm-hmm. In Ephesians 6, Paul gives us the command to put on the whole armor, and that we can stand in the evil day. So there's the belt of truth, there's the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation. And really what we're guarded against are the lies of the enemy.
Yeah.
You know, Satan sits above these principalities and powers, these lying demons. Mm-hmm. And in your book, just really enjoyed you writing about this guy named Matt Moore, mm-hmm. who wrote an article called "I Begged God to Make Me Straight, and He Never Answered." Mm. Matt writes, "I wanted God to take away my same-sex desires for my own benefit so that I could fit in, be normal, be one of the guys, and even so I could just have sex with girls like all my friends were. So I obviously wasn't worried about being sexually moral. I just wanted to be sexually normal. My desire to be made straight was all about me. I had no interest in being reconciled to God or having a relationship with Christ." You write that Moore goes on to say that the root of his struggle wasn't homosexuality. That was just a symptom, albeit a powerful one. His heart needed to be mended. Even after it was, the struggle continued. Mm-hmm. Matt writes, "Am I now straight? Am I now normal? Am I now free from same-sex desires and attracted solely to women? No, no, and no. My heart was changed instantaneously when I trusted in Christ and began to follow Him, but my mind was not. I now have a heart that genuinely loves God and desires to worship Him, but at the same time I'm still utterly messed up and damaged by sin. The Lord is working in me and renewing my mind day by day, shaping me more and more into the reflection of Him that I was created to be. But it's a process, and it will continue to be a process until I receive a new, perfect, and sinless body in the age to come. When that day comes, the fullness of what Jesus purchased for me will be given to me, full freedom from every single thing that restrains my enjoyment and worship of God." So Abdu, the world, the flesh, and the devil's in it all.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you wrote here. And I love the topic because it's something we hear a lot in the culture.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a contingency in the last 20 years saying, no. We can cast a demon out of Matt. Mm-hmm. We can be free of this demon of lust. Mm-hmm. Expound on the process.
Yeah, well, I think that a couple of things is that there is this sense in which it's the demon. Like when we rely only on the idea of casting the demon out, pray the gay away, pray the whatever away, we're actually succumbing to a hyper-spiritualized, baptized version of the devil made me do it.
Yeah.
And there's no personal responsibility in that. I mean, one of the things that Matt quite clearly acknowledges is that his same-sex attraction was in fact sinful, and any acting on it was in fact sinful. He's not saying that I have this attraction, it's like getting the flu. It's not sinful, it's just a thing I have.
Yeah.
He's not saying that. He's saying the attraction itself is sinful, and it's not in keeping with the Spirit. But he's not saying it's necessarily a demon, because I think we can hyper-spiritualize these things and engage in a devil-made-me-do-it kind of a thing where it's, if we just pray hard enough and we have enough faith, we exorcise the demon out, and therefore we're completely delivered. I think that's true in some instances. I believe in demonization. I think people can be demon-possessed. Yeah. I think people can be demon-plagued, as it were, in various states of their faith. But I don't think that everything is like that. I think some things are the result of the fall. I think some things are the result of actual human sin. Not necessarily demons made me do it, but I made me do it. And so what Matt is talking about is that there's this pervasive sense of sin in his life that has plagued his mind. And while his heart was instantly delivered from that sin, his mind was still so used to it. And it's a process by which the mind has to get out of a habit. I mean, look, you can pray for physical fitness and say, look, I have this horrible eating habit, and Lord, can you help me with this? And I think that's right to do it, to pray for delivery from that. Yeah. But you recognize there are habits, and you've created neural pathways and these kind of things in your life.
So the skeptic's going to come along, and even a Christian skeptic's going to come along and say, okay, if we're talking about pure lust, if we're talking about a heterosexual, we get it, we agree with you. But when we get to Matt and a homosexual situation, they're going to say, but he was born that way.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Yeah. Well, my response to that is, I have two responses to that. When someone says, well, they're born that way. So my response is, and? And what does that mean? Yeah. Because people often haven't thought that if you're born that way, then it's okay. Right. Well, the Bible speaks specifically to the idea that we are all born sinful. So we are all born that way in every way possible. What I go on to write about in the book, and what I've talked about when I've talked to people with same-sex attractions, anybody within the LGBTQIA plus sort of like spectrum there, is I'm broken in every way there is to be broken. I was born broken in every way there is to be broken, not in some ways, in every way. So to varying degrees, whether it's I'm broken sexually to this degree, but broken emotionally to this degree. I have a problem with anger, a problem with pride, or whatever. We're all broken in every way to varying degrees. The homosexual's brokenness happens to manifest itself this way, and mine happens to manifest itself in some other kind of a way. So we're all born that way. And by the way, when I look at this, even on a genetic level, people who have two Y chromosomes, for example, you can have Klinefelter syndrome, XYY, or XXY. There's different versions of these various syndromes, and they manifest themselves in certain kind of behavior, like violence, or a little bit more prone to narcissism, or whatever it is, because of the biology and the mental interact. Are we therefore to say, well, you're born that way, so we're not going to punish you for bad behavior? Well, no one says that. So born that way doesn't mean anything in that sense that it excuses any kind of behavior.
And then you have Romans 1 where it says God turned them over. God would never turn them over to something. People say, well, God turned them over, but they were born that way. No, it doesn't make any sense.
Right, exactly, because you can't turn someone over to a thing that they naturally already are,
fault.
And isn't morally wrong anyway.
Yeah.
If you turn them over to these things, you turn them over to what? To this delusion, to the sinful desires of their heart. So you have to couch it in terms of that sin, but you also have to understand that people who are, like Matt and others, who are going through the process and get saved, even though it's a process, it doesn't mean that they are people who love their sin. They're people who hate it, and they want to be delivered from it, but they're recognizing, like Matt does, that for some instances, there is an instant delivery. And in some instances in human behavior, there is a non-instant delivery. It's a process. And God in his sovereignty knows which one you need in order to be a testimony to others and to be a demonstration of God's power. And his work and his grace in your life. And so I think it's up to God to determine, why it is that you're not, delivered. And I know people who've been delivered from drug addiction that fast. And I know folks who have not been delivered from drug addiction that fast. But what they were delivered of instantly, Matt Moore was, and I think every believer is they're delivered from the sin of not recognizing it's a sin.
Yeah, that's really good. So I like to use the phrase, I have been delivered, right? God delivered me from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light.
Right.
I am being delivered from a host of things. And what Matt said, one day I will be delivered.
That's right.
That will be the final deliverance. Yeah. So we're all fellow strugglers while we're here.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
by the way, real quick, you look at it too. I did a whole talk on this about the walk of faith. We think that faith is like a growth chart. Like a young boy starts out this height, and then as he gets older, he starts growing, and it's a steady. He never goes backwards. Yeah. He keeps going up. That's not how faith growth works. Faith growth looks like a stock chart. It goes up and it has its valleys and up, but it trends up and to the right. But there's deep valleys. Peter is called out to be a disciple. He says, get away from me, I'm a sinful man. There's humility. But later on, he rebukes Jesus of all people. Then later on, he denies Jesus. And then he preaches Acts chapter 2. And then later on, Paul has to confront him to his face about the way in which he's acting a little hypocritically. Yeah. I act this way with these people and this way with these people. Yeah. If Peter has a spiritual growth that's a stock chart, where it has its valleys and its peaks. Well, not I. I mean, this is Peter, for heaven's sake. So, yeah.
So when we start to get into this, I think people want this instant deliverance because you go to the Gospels and Jesus heals a lot of sickness, but I think about 20% of the time he's casting demons out. And so you'll see Jesus with an epileptic, a man who's mute and blind, and he says he cast the demon out. And people have a tendency to say, well, if that was instant deliverance, then why can't it be now?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a movement afoot where deliverance ministries say, no, you can be instantly delivered.
Yeah, and I think that can be the case. You can be instantly delivered of something in particular, but not everything. I mean, I don't know of one Christian who doesn't actually act with sin, no matter how much you've been delivered of certain things. But I have a couple of responses to that. The first response is, and I'll ask Jesus this when I see him, because this one I never understood this one, and I'll get there. It doesn't cast any doubt on my faith whatsoever, but he heals people of blindness all the time. Sometimes he's not even there when he heals people of sicknesses. He says, it's going to be fine, go to the house and all that. Other times he's got to be there. He delivers people or heals people in his particular way at a particular time for his own good purposes, sometimes from afar, sometimes en masse, sometimes in specific. One guy he heals of blindness and it's instantaneous. Another guy he heals and the guy's like, it kind of worked, and then he does it again. That's the one I'm going to ask him about. Like, why didn't this work the first time? There's a purpose behind it. There's got to be. And my point is that guy wasn't instantly delivered of his blindness. There was something Jesus wanted to have accomplished in having it be phase 1 and phase 2 of his healing. Now, it was instantaneous in the sense that Jesus didn't leave and come back, but there's this sense in which deliverance isn't complete in every way, shape, and form, and sometimes it's gradual. Sometimes it's instantaneous. I think that there's a process of sanctification. The Bible speaks to this over and over again. And Paul even says, that which I do not want to do, I end up doing, and that which I want to do, I don't do. Who's going to save me from this body of death? Now, whether Paul's talking about himself or just people who struggle with this stuff generally, he says there's this ultimate thing that happens is that thanks be to God, that we are delivered from this in Christ Jesus. So it is an eventual thing. The Bible speaks about it all the time, about it being eventual. And the demons, I think Jesus, the Bible also speaks about the fact that Jesus performed many miracles. Sometimes the gospel writers will be general. They'll say he went into that town and did many miracles and healed many of sicknesses and that kind of stuff. That could be mental illness. It doesn't say it is or isn't. Right. It could be physical illness, and it could be demon possession, and it could be all three. We just don't know. I think when the Bible specifically has Jesus healing people of physical infirmities, it's to show something, make a point that in this particular instance, Jesus is the master of the physical body and the physical world. When he heals people from demon possession or delivers them from that, it's to show that the demons, there's not a war where two seemingly equal sides are at fight. Yeah. The demons are no match for him, and that's the point of that. So it's not necessarily saying that, these backwards Bronze Age people didn't believe in mental illness. It's not saying that. It's just saying that Jesus is the master of the physical and the spiritual. And he could have cured many people of various mental illnesses throughout his earthly sojourn. We just don't know that.
So another question is John 5 when he heals the paralyzed man and leaves everybody else there, right?
Yeah.
Why? So, I mean, and then there's also the idea that if he has the power over that, he has the power over sin, and he was bringing the kingdom.
Yeah.
Right? He was showing the kingdom of God has come. The kingdom of God was in power.
Oh, yeah.
He was showing us the kingdom. So a lot of Christians they'll use the verse in Mark that we'll cast out demons, and they'll say we'll do greater works. And why don't we see healing today on the grand scale? Well, because Jesus isn't here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's times and places, but this overemphasis on instant deliverance or we're doing something wrong.
And I also think that's a part and parcel of the culture. I think we have a microwave culture. We have an instant gratification culture where we need it to happen right now or it didn't really happen. You take a look at anybody who engages in any kind of a sport or that takes physical discipline, and they'll tell you, you watch your favorite sports hero. You watch Michael Jordan. When I was a kid, that's who I watched, Michael Jordan. You're like, I want to get like that and do this and this and this. And then you begin to read what it took for him to get there. Yeah, God-given natural talent. It is what it is.
Sure.
But he worked twice as hard as everybody else. And there was something character forming. Now, whether you watch The Last Dance and you walk away with that and thinking, maybe not so much. But there's something about that hard work that develops something else in you other than physical prowess. There's something about grit. There's something about stick-to-itiveness. And I think the spiritual world is like that as well. Paul talks about it where I beat my body into submission, and I'm not as one who boxes the air doing nothing. There's something about the process itself that is formative.
And then it's Christ in me, the hope of glory, right? It's a paradox.
Yeah.
And listen, we'd all want to see people healed instantly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's something like, okay, if God's powerful, I just want to see it. So, again, we kind of see through the glass dimly.
But and we also do have evidence of it, though. I mean, look, Lee Strobel did a book on miracles, and I know Eric Metaxas has done a book on miracles. There is a great 2-volume set by Craig Keener where he documents medically documented miracles all over the place.
Absolutely.
It's not a matter of it does it happen, is it are we willing to see it? Here's my classic example. And Lee Strobel posted this, actually. He posted something from a medical journal where there's an actual study right now happening on healing proximal to prayer. It's in an actual, honest-to-goodness secular medical journal where these healings happen proximal to someone praying about this specifically. In the case, the paradigmatic case was a guy who had a J-tube inserted into his esophagus and into his stomach because he can't digest without racking pain or even dying from it. So he's got a J-tube in there, and for 16 years. Someone prays for him, and the J-tube gets removed like that day. And they're like, well, that's hard to explain. And so one of the responses from a skeptic was, you're telling me that you believe in miracles just because your alleged God cured someone of gas? And I'm like, you are not reading what it says. A J-tube is not gas. And the infirmity that requires a J-tube is so profound that for you to say it is indicative of how dismissive you are of the evidence. So it's not that we don't see it. It's that we don't want to.
Oh, we have so many people here over 30 years who had a 10% chance of living and have made it through, and you go to the doctors and doctors just throw up their hands. There's so many cases.
Oh, yeah.
So, Abdu, you have a new book coming out. Very excited. I think it comes out in 2026 called Fake ID. What a great title.
Oh, thanks.
How AI, artificial intelligence, and identity ideology are compromising reality, and what can we do about it?
Yeah.
My gosh, everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Technology is very low on my skill set, but I am a convert to ChatGPT because it's slowed my research down. I mean, my gosh, what used to take me 5 or 6 books, I'm sorry, it sped my research up.
Yeah.
So, but I'm aware of where all this is going. I actually just saw something on YouTube with John MacArthur talking about the new Pope. And about a minute in, I'm like, this isn't John MacArthur. Because he said a word, he mispronounced a word that John would know.
Yeah.
And then I realized that's not John's voice.
Yep.
So the horse is out of the barn.
Yeah.
So what's your angle?
So my angle is sort of what you're just talking about here, is that the reason I wrote this book in the first place was because of this phrase, reality collapse, that I heard these 2 AI researchers, people who are advocates of technology, Asa Raskin and Tristan Harris, were talking about the effects of what they're calling third contact with AI. We've had multiple contacts already with AI, but the third contact is actually these LLMs, these large language models like ChatGPT and Claude and Copilot and Gemini and all this. What they talk about is various things that are happening, and they use this phrase in this 1-hour presentation: reality collapse. That's it, and they didn't explain it at all. I'm like, whoa, that was a huge phrase. What was that? So I dive into this. And what you begin to see is that reality is collapsing because of our over-reliance on technology. I'm not against technology. I'm a technophile. I mean, when the new one of these comes out, I'm like, can I get that? I don't. I restrain myself. Yeah. But I, ask my wife. I'm a button pusher. I love if it got buttons on it, I push it. I love this stuff. But I'm also very leery, not of the technology. I'm leery of the people who use it because I don't think the problem is in the silicon of the AI. I think it's in the soul of the humans using it. So what happens with reality collapse is we create deep fakes. John MacArthur says something. It's not really John MacArthur. I saw an ad on YouTube recently. I was watching a certain video. An ad came up, and it's this woman at the kitchen who's talking about this incredible weight loss recipe, and I'm going to show it to you. And you're watching her, and she's like really going at it and doing her thing, and you look at her mouth, and it's a little bit funny. But if you don't pay attention, you'll think it's actually, she's not there. She's not even doing that. It's not even her. So reality begins to collapse on our ideal perception of what is truth. And why that matters is that we're in a post-truth world that elevates feelings and preferences over facts and truth. But now we're in a post-truth world where we're actually paying people to lie to us, and we want them to. AI has a way of doing that. When I got involved in this whole research thing in the first place, I dabble in digital art. So I have an iPad and I have a pen and I dabble in digital art and I scratch my little things out on my computer. When I saw a headline a couple of years ago, a guy won an art contest. They had a digital section for digital art. And he won first prize. And the image is beautiful. It's gorgeous. No one knew it, but he didn't put a pen to one thing. He didn't do anything physical at all. All he did was type into a large language model, a image generator called Midjourney. He typed in a prompt, tweaked it a little bit, submitted that image, and he won first prize. Everyone found out about it, including the judges, and they let him keep the prize for whatever reason. And the artists got mad, like, this is not art. And this was his statement. His name is Jason Allen, and it's well known. It's the New York Times and everything. He said, in defense of his winning first prize in the digital art category for never actually doing any art, he said, it's over. AI won, humans lost, art is dead. This is an artist talking. And I thought to myself, what a strange boast. What a weird thing to boast about your own obsolescence in the very thing that makes you human. Apart from chimps, apart from other animals, we create art as an expression, I believe, of us being made artfully in God's image. He's boasting about our obsolescence. I gave it a little more thought, and I thought to myself, I don't think he's boasting about the technology. I think he's doing a very Garden of Eden thing, is that he's saying essentially, when we revolted in the garden, we did it too early. We tried to become God by eating the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but we didn't have the ability to best him yet. But here we are now. God can't create a being equal to himself because God is perfect, and a being who is perfect requires no creation. So the minute you create a being, it's not perfect anymore because it requires something else to explain its existence. But here we are now in our digital Eden, and we've created this godlike thing that can answer any question you want to ask it, and it can do almost anything you want it to do. And pretty soon, with the robots and all these things that are instantiating this thing physically, it'll be able to do crazy, amazing things, some of which are super beneficial to humanity, some of which not so much. And we've created our own God. And so God can't create a being equal to himself, but we've created something better than ourselves. And so we have, in our own minds, become the God of God. And that's the ultimate collapse of reality.
So in every advancement, the church has always railed against the newest invention. And then we've overcome, right? Is this it?
Well, it's funny you say that because, it's funny
or will we kind of harness this and move on to the next thing?
I think we can harness it if the church asserts its relevance more than ever. It's required now more than ever. New technologies, sometimes the church has adopted them. Hold on. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Technology. the church has sometimes adopted and or propagated the newest technologies for the sake of the gospel. The book, for example.
Oh, of course.
Dan Wallace, the New Testament scholar, has said, if Christians didn't invent it, then we're the ones who popularized it. Used to be on scrolls, and so the book comes out.
Martin Luther was at the cutting edge of when books started to go into mass production. And, and television, Billy Graham, right, with William Randolph Hearst. And radio. So, the propagation of the gospel has always followed the crest of these inventions.
And that's the point. You can redeem this stuff for the good. Here is the danger, though. I think that the way you redeem this stuff for the good is you recognize that not the technology itself is bad, but the people who wield it are sinners. I think with AI, the biggest risk to me is not that the machines will become more human-like. That's not the risk I'm worried about. What I am worried about is the humans will become more machine-like. Here's a classic example. We're doing it now. We have it all the time. You go onto YouTube, and you watch a video, and you're teaching the algorithm what you like.
What you like. It comes, new stuff
Yep.
comes up.
And then so all the stuff on the side says, you might like this. And you're like, why, yes, machine, I will like that. And you start clicking and you get into the YouTube black hole. Netflix, same thing. It says you might like these kinds of movies. And you're like, why, yes, Netflix, I like those kinds of movies. And so the AI is training you to like the things you already like so you never break out of a mold. And you become more and more. You know what does that? You know what follows commands without thinking? Robots. And we're becoming like that. What I'm worried about is that we'll become more enslaved to this thing that does the things for us because we're path of least resistance creatures. And AI will be that. But it also will allow us to create these deep fakes that traffic human beings in sex without them even knowing it. I mean, there's a story that came out where a young lady who had a very nice, huge following on a particular social media platform, a guy scanned her body, her face, her voice, her everything, created pornography deep fakes of her and sold it for lots of money. She was trafficked and she never left her house. And then they're creating child pornography through this stuff. I can go on and on and on. And young people are falling in love, so to speak, with these chat bots. The story came out where a young guy killed himself in order to be with, in an esoteric realm, the chat bot, which isn't physical. And it's causing real harm. So I'm not against the technology. I think the way the church deals with it is to reinfuse, what I'm trying to get through with this book, is to reinfuse a sense of what it means to be made in the image of God. And we're at a good stage right now for this because Gen Z, as enamored as they are with these bots and this technology, is also more spiritually curious than the previous generations. So we have an opportunity like never before.
Yeah, and I think the church has cornered the market on personhood. We know we're made in the image of God. We live in community. It's just something the world can't get.
Yeah.
And so so let's stay in the positive vein. You travel a lot, hearing great things from colleges. Our summer series has the gentleman who was preaching when revival broke out in Asbury.
Wow.
And he's been a busy guy since.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We're hearing a lot of great things on college campuses. What are you seeing in your travels with evangelism?
I'm seeing a ton of the same thing. I'm seeing not only – it's funny because I do see the older end and the younger end of Gen Z really spiritually curious. And it was I started to see it when we're going to these universities, which you think typically are these really tough places where they're going to yell at you and throw things through windows and burn stuff when you show up. And they don't. They come to the microphone. They ask really hard questions, but they're not asking gotcha questions. They're asking hard questions because they actually want an answer. They don't want to just see if you can be trapped like a journalist might give you a gotcha. I began to see that years ago. And I'm like, there's something going on here. And I think it's being manifest now in the spiritual curiosity and the willingness to come to faith. We're seeing people give their life to Christ at universities, secular universities, tough places. We're seeing them happen at churches too. We've started to have this initiative, we're calling it Ask Anything, where a church actually becomes an open forum where what we do at universities, we're doing at churches now because it used to be the case back in the day, way back in the day, where someone who had deep, serious, and sincere questions would go to the church first. Now it's like there was a revival happening when they're going to the church, but it used to be 5 years ago. The last place a person would go would be the church. Yeah. So through this Ask Anything initiative, we're trying to make the church the first place. And they're okay coming. Now, they don't always come to the microphones at a church. At the universities, they're happy to go to the microphones. But the skeptics don't go to the mics necessarily at churches, although some do. What happens is that what I'm seeing is they line up. We were at a church in New York, and the lines at the microphone were long. But afterwards, the line stretched the entire length of the sanctuary of people wanting to talk personally, because I think they felt a little bit more free to not be judged by the sort of religious people around them. But I think the more and more the church invites people, the more they'll come to the mics because they'll feel encouraged to be able to do that. And this is not just a Western phenomenon. This is happening globally.
Yeah. So you came out of Islam, had a long journey. You've written about it, talked about it.
Yep.
What's going on in the Islamic community here in the U.S. and abroad when it comes to faith and these type of things?
So it's interesting to talk about technology. Technology is making it impossible to keep the gospel out of places that was hard to get into. I think the information age is going to be one of these tremendous boons to the gospel message, because while we have an age of misinformation and disinformation, we also have an age of true information that's seeping in as well. You're seeing young people who are willing to say, I'm willing to challenge a worldview. Just because I believed it doesn't mean I have to stay that way. So you're seeing people come to faith in the United States. You're seeing people come to faith in Europe. It's happening. And you're also seeing people come to faith, especially in very closed-off countries. I mean, Iran, by many reports, is one of the fastest-growing churches in the world. And here's the interesting thing. A lot of the revival is being instituted by, or maybe even organized by, women in Iran, which is really, really interesting. And and part of it is that they are forming networks, and then men are coming to the fore and beginning to lead as well. It's really, really quite cool. In Iran, in Egypt, and of course in non-Muslim countries like China, you're seeing this as well. I think you're seeing a surge towards this. I'm encouraged because a lot of Muslims became atheists. In fact, some of the mullahs and the ayatollahs and all these were talking about the crisis in Islam was not Christianity, it was atheism. And here's the reason. Because they were taught as kids that Islam is the best thing going. You really can't question it, not because it's unquestionable, but because we won't let you. And third is Christianity is dumb. It's just stupid. It doesn't have any good theology behind it. And so when the horrors of ISIS and all these things, they're like, well, maybe I should question it. But Christianity is dumb, so they have a choice between horrible and dumb. So they pick neither. But now they're seeing it's not so dumb. In fact, it's compelling. And so they're picking the gospel, and it's very encouraging.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So last question.
Yeah.
What's driving you these days? What's your passion? What's igniting you? Like you said, we're like that stock ticker.
Yeah.
we ebb and flow. What's driving you these days?
I really do think it's this. I'm seeing this surge for the quest for meaning amidst so many things and suffering and all these things, especially in younger people. There is Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. I think they are an anxious generation. And I think what's got me fired up is that the receptivity to the gospel is so at such a high level right now that I can't help but want to go and share it, especially in universities. We often put it, our ministry, we go to places we thought we couldn't go to say things we thought we couldn't say to people we thought wouldn't listen, but they're listening. And so I'm a big fan of a challenge, so I want to go to the hardest places. And then you get rewarded when you see that God shows up in these ways. So I'm just fired up about that. And in my own personal walk, when I begin to see, my kids blossoming and growing into their faith and the things we've gone through in the past 7 months that have been pretty, pretty tough, I'm seeing God's goodness through it all. And I can go on for 2 hours about that alone. But the fact that God is moving in some profound ways, even in the midst of suffering, even in the midst of unimaginable suffering in my own life and other people's lives, I'm seeing his handiwork, and I'm just ever more confident that, I read the back of the book and it goes well. And I'm still okay with that.
And it's the Lord's will that none perish. That's what keeps us going, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's people out there that don't know their right hand from their left hand, and we get to bring them truth. And truth sets you free and puts people on a trajectory like Matt and yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so good. Abdu, thanks for joining us, and we pray for your ministry.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure.
God bless.
You too.